Hey, this is Nicole calling from Hamilton, and I needed to let everyone know that I really proudly support Vish and Creative Control. I have for many years, I will for many more, as long as he keeps delivering these amazing interview podcasts. When you hear one of Vish's interviews, you think he's known this guest for years, they're good friends, but the truth is he approaches every interview, whether it's sort of up-and-coming indie artists or established icons or like famous, intimidating comedians with a really deep, genuine curiosity, so he's never met this person, and the same really warm candor, as so he's known them forever. I think it really lends to a great chat, no matter who he's talking to, and for that reason, I think you should throw Vish, $1 a month? He's got jokes. The jokes make it worth it. Support Creative Control on Patreon.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today. I'm Vish's wife, and remember, when you name a dog Janet or Timothy, you are dragging humanity down just a little bit.
Ben Gunning is a multi-talented musician, singer, and songwriter based in Toronto, Ontario. Originally from Pointe Claire, Quebec, Gunning used to be in a band called Local Rabbits, in which he shared singing and songwriting duties with Peter Elkis, and earned the band a reputation for being such hotshots, Nico Case asked them to back her up for a spell there. Gunning has gone on to have a fascinating and impossible to genre classify solo trajectory, and he currently co-runs a label called Tone Bonk with musicians Tom Gill, Robin Dan, and Kieran Adams. Just before I moved out of Ontario in December of 2019, Ben and I met at a small but hustly and bustly Toronto cocktail bar to discuss his music history both before and well after Local Rabbits, his views on liberated music making within the confines of conventions, traditions, and preconceived expectations, the secrets of bands that are musical democracies, why viable careers in underground music don't really exist anymore, his thoughts on DJ culture, his latest album, Nature, future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control. And Massey Hall's concert film series live at masseyhall.com, where you can stream dozens of 30-minute films for free, including performances by past podcast guests like Sloan, plus in-kind support from Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 544th episode of Creative Control, featuring the thoughtful and super talented Ben Gunning, with your host, me, Vish Khanna.
Plays out here in its explorer and fauna. See where our stalker plucked some belladonna, in hopes he'd finally see his vision's face. This ravaged ground, we stand upon his edge with the erratic stride of our stalker who became fanatic. His beckoning, I don't know where to be found.
Hi, Ben. How's it going?
Hi, pretty good here.
Good. Thanks for meeting me in, where are we? What is this place? Northwood?
This is called Northwood, yeah.
Why did you pick this place? Why are we here?
It was a practical place to choose given our where we need to go in a little while.
Right,
so yeah.
Right. Do you come here often? I'm not picking you up.
Oh, I have been. Yeah, it's pretty relatively close to where I live. Yeah.
Okay. Is it a cocktail bar primarily?
I'd say they're mostly known for cocktails. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a cocktail person. What did you have there? You have something.
They called it a Mezcal Old-Fashioned.
And what does that mean? That sounds like a Mad Men drink. I'm very naive about the drinking. I don't drink. I ordered a Mexican Coke. That's what I ordered.
I've never ordered this before, so I'm assuming they followed the same approach to an old-fashioned, which is to kind of sweeten it and put some bitters in there. I think that's kind of the main components.
Okay.
Otherwise, instead of using whatever you'd use, like a bourbon, they use mezcal.
Okay.
That's as far as I can go. I'm not a cocktail connoisseur.
You're not the cocktail guy from way back or nothing?
No.
Okay.
No wax mustache or anything.
It's nice too. I don't remember the last time we did something like this. I know you were on I had a CBC show. Did we go for breakfast and stuff?
We did go for breakfast one time.
Okay.
I chose a bad place.
You did?
I remember it was like kind of supposed to be a classic place, but it was very like lackluster diner kind of thing.
I think I'd been to it either before or again since you took me.
Okay.
So you weren't the only one.
Yeah.
I'm glad we can't remember the name because it avoids libel.
Yeah.
Libel suit.
Fair.
But that was like, 10 years ago or something?
Maybe
Probably.
less, but yeah, something like a long
Beige
time.
Blur was the record, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
It's
So
probably
that is
gone back.
That is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 and change.
10 and change. And you've released how many records since that one? 3?
I've
4?
released 3 records since that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I talked about this with our mutual friends Rob Benby and Peter Elkis when they were on a few weeks ago. Your band, The Local Rabbits, meant a lot to me when I was a kid.
Good to know.
We were both kids, weren't we? Aren't we around the same age? I'm like 41.
I'm 43, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was quite young in that band, yeah.
But
yeah.
you seemed older. You seemed a lot older than me at the time. Well, because you were on stage. And you were like
it helps, yeah.
So it's
Power imbalance, yeah.
It's meaningful to me to get to talk to you on this show. So I want to kind of start from the beginning. The new album is Nature, right?
Yes.
And it's quite a bit different than, let's say, Beige Blur, some of your Rabbit stuff, right?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah.
How would you characterize it in comparison to even the last record you made?
Well, the record before was Massive Love, and I would say that it's hard to imagine somebody that may have like stuck on board with stuff I've made from the beginning, because I think it's rare that in this kind of environment that people, and myself included, and I'm a pretty big music fan, like I think it's rare that people kind of stay along for the ride. It's very difficult to pay attention to one single artist now. So,
right.
But in your mind, you imagine, I try to imagine somebody who may have kind of perceived what I was doing, or like got a little glimpse of it. I think there's a thread maybe there from the beginning that is, like some musical leanings that I have, but production style is a big factor in people's perception of music, because we have a very like archaic but deep-rooted like genre way of thinking about music, and
right.
I felt like maybe I took an anthropological approach rather. Given that I have a degree in it, I should be able to pronounce it. But
like a cultural studies approach, almost.
I've always felt like if you're in it and you know how to make music, that it's possible to blend elements that have been, I guess, associated with certain genres, and just treat them like musical elements while still being cautious about appropriation and also just like the gross, like not only cultural appropriation, but just like artistic appropriation, or just what I would sum up by saying somebody taking a random like record scratch sound and putting it on a pop tune, which we heard in like the early 2000s or something, where it's just like, here I'm acknowledging this genre or something.
Right.
So it was a really long-winded answer, but the last record was, I think, like instrumentally speaking, it had a lot of synthesizers, drum machine. I would say that really the biggest changes between the last record and this one is that the tempos are maybe a little faster. There's maybe more of an overt like house influence on some of the tunes, but that would be misleading to somebody who's like a house fanatic. But it has a lot more of those tempos. But really, for me, it's been a continual progression in my taste and challenging myself and continuing to try to be useful as an artist, make something that I don't think is maybe represented that well, and try to be true to myself and not be tricking anyone or patronizing anyone.
That's interesting. Like, it seems like you are making music in the way that a lot of people consume it now on the internet, that there's no genre anymore. Like,
Agreed.
we kind of just listen to everything. And I kind of, when I was thinking back on some of our conversations, I remember being struck by, I think it was Beige Blur. Is that your first solo album since the Local Rabbits ended? Yeah. You would kind of incorporate lyrical imagery that was very technological based, like office computer stuff that I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like a lot of people weren't doing that at the time, kind of recognizing what was then modern technology and putting it into songs. Like rappers did it, like certain genres that seemed to be okay, but in pop and rock music, it just never happened. You seem to be really cognizant and conscious of trying to acknowledge the time you're in your music. Is that fair to say?
That is 100% fair to say, and I think I came off, I might do it again this time, but I come off as maybe a little aggressive in my opinion sometimes on these topics. I would say that there's a lot of insincerity in a lot of music I hear, and I feel like one of the paths that seems possible, particularly from a rock background, especially in the past before a lot of the genre busting became a lot more common as the internet and its kind of like ways of disseminating music really took off to the degree that we see today. It felt like the normal path would be like, oh, I'm going to be a songwriter, and immediately there are some like presumptions about what that means. And I think
1960s, 1970s kind of mold, right?
Yeah, and the lyrical, the ways of approaching lyrics are very much set in stone. And if you don't want to follow that, you pay the price, because people kind of like to hear things that they're aware of, and they like to reference, like something else they hear and say, okay, well, this is in this tradition.
Familiarity,
yeah. and but also like the whole, especially 10 years ago, and maybe amplified by being in Canada, like the whole kind of critical realm as well is very rewarding of people who accurately depict something that is already established.
Right.
Which I find, that may sound arrogant, but that always drove me nuts, and I felt like your job is to try to like create something that I would never be satisfied following that path. So. Yeah. I kind of tried. I'm not. I could get bad shivers with some of the things I did on that record. It's a long time ago. It's still like this baby version of me, but
right.
But I was very conscious about the fact that I didn't want the lyrics to be like a false kind of like rootsy, folksy approach to songwriting. Although I value some of those songwriters. If you're good, you're good. But I feel like if anything, I err on the side of assuming people are not like. Sincere, and I feel like there's a lot of like just capitalizing off those modes or something, and people want to survive, right? They want to be like they want to be a known artist. Everybody sort of does in the back of their mind if they're putting stuff out there. So I mean, if you want to pat on the back right away, that's probably the best route for you. But other people probably don't necessarily feel that burden. They may just, some people's relationship with music is, I heard this thing, I like it, so I'm going to do something similar.
Right.
Which is also okay.
It's sort of in it. You mentioned, baby version of you. I mean, a lot of first expressions are emulation, right? And then you kind of find your way, hopefully. I'm trying to figure out, the reason we're having this conversation, at least from my perspective, is when I first encountered you, when we were both probably teenagers, you were like a guitar slinging rocker on some level. Is that a fair categorization?
Sure, I played guitar, and
you played guitar and you screamed and yelled and sang.
Well, I thought it was singing, but
you were singing, but it was
not good.
No, it was wonderful. I thought it was wonderful,
joking.
It was strong. Like, it was a bold statement, and I even thought back then that you were a very sort of analytical and critical writer of culture at the time. But your first instrument was guitar, right? Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. How did you get into guitar?
Or
music generally, I should say.
Okay. My parents
taking you back a ways.
My parents would have been. My parents are very cool, but they would have been maybe a little bit more square in their music taste if they didn't fall in with a group of friends. That were kind of like, I don't know how to summarize them, but they were really into music and tapped into some left-of-center choices, definitely in the singer-songwriter zone, but they were aware and into things that maybe the mainstream would have been, like they used to go see Jesse Winchester in Montreal when he played there. It was somebody that was always playing at my house, and so music was always around. Music was always playing in the background. My dad plays drums as well.
Oh, okay.
It's not like he was always playing. He wasn't active like playing in bands when I was, alive, I don't think, but except for with his friends once in a while.
Sure.
But it was always around. And then, I don't know, I guess through that, guitar seems like in a picture that's a long enough time ago that it's kind of like you're in the suburbs as a white kid. It's kind of like rock music is maybe just like a default area of interest because that's what's given to you.
You were
and so it's like guitar, Point Claire,
Quebec, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like okay, guitar, so I like classic rock. You'd hear it.
Sure.
That was available to me. I couldn't just be like, I want to find out about this obscure subgenre because no internet, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So, that was like just like a default decision. And then I was into it. I was into a lot of guitar-based music. I learned it. I sat there trying to learn stuff that I didn't even have any right to understand. But I didn't have any proper like theory guidance. And then I really was encouraged by the whole kind of like indie kind of culture thing where it had the carryover from punk where it's like, hey, you need no expertise. And I really loved the idea that we can say, oh shit, I could just form a band.
Yeah.
I met Pete and Ryan back in high school, and we just started like writing tunes, albeit a little weak in some areas, but and it was a lot of my consciousness about like why I would continue making music when no more music is needed that I have now was not there at the time. It's like when you're a kid, it's just like I'm doing this amazing thing, I'm awesome, like there's no contemplating anything, I don't think, when you're 17, 18.
You're an overthinker, aren't you? Do you overthink?
Oh, I think.
Or do you think the
right amount?
Do you think other people are underthinking, perhaps? Not really. Like you just said something very selfless on one hand, but I think also potentially a bit self-defeating. Like, why make music when there's enough of it going around? That's a message you've just conveyed.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. Everybody thinks about that. Maybe that sounds defeatist. I'm not sure. It could be, because I don't think it's healthy that knowing my own arc as a kid or a young person, you should not feel like we don't want to go back to the realm where it felt like, oh, there's the radio and everyone thinks about like 70s, the Enemy era of like FM radio. It was like this, the whole punk thing comes out of that. Yeah. Whatever.
Sure.
I mean, nobody should feel intimidated about participating in music, but if you're gonna like record music and put yourself out there as like a product essentially, then and you're an adult, you at a certain point you want to go, you'll have to go, why am I doing this? Because it's not rewarding a lot of the time. I mean, for 1 in a million it may be, but a lot of the time it's just like a slog. Most of the people that I'm that I still hang out with, that still play music, like everybody's had that conversation where you're going like, the hell are we doing? Like, there's no way to make a living off this. It's generally disappointing, and it's such a fickle kind of transient, overabundant realm right now that you really have to contemplate that. If you're not, to me. And again, some people wouldn't even describe it this way, but some people's focus, like they fuse together careerism and to me, I've always seen those as separate things. Like to be like, oh, I'm going to do this thing and I want to live off it, and I want everything and I want to be known for it.
Yeah.
There's not really that many paths to be like an original,
right?
Artist,
sure.
and buy a house out of that at the end of it. So
I think that's diminishing for all artists, not just
So I do think it's important to try to get back to your question. I do think it is important to be conscious what you're doing, what you're putting out there. Not to the degree that it is paralyzing when you're somebody that's just trying to experiment with music and start. You don't want to lose that experimental thing. And I think that oblivion is great. But at a certain point, you have to decide, like, why am I doing this?
But in my memory, and as you may recall, I would go see your band play a lot. And you say you got into guitar and you're self-taught, but you are, at the time when I would see you play so much, we were all just blown away by your playing. Like, you were very good at the guitar. And does that carry over in other aspects of your life? I don't want to put you on the spot. Are you particularly good at things, Ben? Are you that kind of guy?
Thank you very much. But indie rock in the 90s and early 2000s was not a realistic bar for good playing necessarily.
You play, but that's why you stuck out. You and Pete would play, and the guitar interplay was astonishing. Like, that's why it stood out. I mean, you guys, maybe Matt Murphy of the Super Friends, certain people were just like high level.
There was a very anti-musical aspect to the kind of indie rock,
Yes.
what would you call it, culture, framework, whatever,
Yeah.
all the way through to criticism that is still there with older school kind of like outlets. Like, I still see it. I don't read much music criticism, so
Yeah, right.
but it's still, there's a vapor of it still there. It's mostly gone because it's a completely different world now. But
Yeah.
But that was something I definitely reacted against, and I had to fuse together my appreciation for groups that didn't value that, and be legitimate about the things that I liked, that I was getting into, that did value like good playing, and also had an interest in things that were like deemed uncool in sort of the confines of indie rock. So I think we tried to find some common ground, and always enjoyed putting a little bit of a bit of a pill in the ice cream. I've used that analogy a lot of times, but like, it was always fun to like rub our peers the wrong way by some of our musical choices or like production choices. And I think that's
merchandise. Your merchandise was always pretty weird.
Heinous, yeah.
I was telling
unwearable.
I have the Rita McNeil Local Rabbit shirt still.
Oh yeah, you should. Yeah, that should. Please edit that out. The fact that even existed.
No, it was. There was a sense of fun at the time too to that band, that I think you were kind of. Pete described it recently as kind of being sort of maybe self-sabotage, but I actually thought it was a punk attitude. You were kind of railing against the powers that be a little bit as the Local Rabbits. Would you say that was true?
I would say that is true. I think I still have that actually, and I don't know. Yeah, I do feel like your job. I think I said the word as an artist, and when people say that, it makes me want to vomit. So delete that as well. But like, again, a sense of purpose is important if you're going to spend time on something, and if you're going to contribute to something in a saturated culture.
Yeah.
I do think having a healthy reactionary streak is good, because it forces you to like contemplate like what is needed. Now, how you use that is another thing. I mean, there are people who are so focused on that it almost supersedes anything else. I do like the balance between like something that satisfies you, something that may turn other people. It's easy to turn like a geek off, but I like turning potentially my peers off.
Why is that? What does that say about you're contrary on some level?
I think so, but I want to make sure that I find that sweet spot in my taste that forces me to explore maybe an area that is not being explored, because what's the point of just reiterating something that everyone likes already?
You would be very critical in your songwriting, even in the Local Rabbits. Like, you would pick a subject or an idea, and I always thought it was things that mostly bothered you. And you would really home in on them in very interesting ways. Like, do you remember the power of that? Like, I can be critical of something in the confines of a goofy indie rock song. Do you remember that sensation?
I felt the ability to like write about whatever I wanted, and I did focus on that, which is a bit immature, and that's part of my personality that I do want to work on, because I can tend to be very negative. It's easy to write in a negative manner, and I've tried to like evolve a little bit, but honestly, it was very, it wasn't as designed as you might perceive, or maybe not, but it certainly wasn't. It was chaotic. We thought it was like, we're in a band, people like us, we're performing. We would like kind of like, we were on tour, and we would act like rockers. Like, we would actually get like hammered and like try to find people the next day, like as opposed to just doing a photo shoot where we look like we're all tired. It's like we actually were the band that didn't show up on time. I'm not proud of that, but we were. It was real. I'm illustrating that we were not organized, and the eclectic what's the word?
Eclecticism?
Eclecticism of
Yeah.
the band. It's my last chance to mispronounce a word.
You've had one of these drinks here. The
True, I'll
cocktails.
blame it on that.
Yeah, blame it on
Not
the
just
cocktail.
poor command of the language.
It was a complicated band on some
It was
level.
a bit of a weird mishmash and there was. I would be lying to say that didn't cause like a rub. I mean, certainly there was like a taste clash at times, and I think when we parted ways, that probably came to a head. But there were also practical reasons. But while we were happening, it was like we have an album. Everyone's got material. There was some sort of like, oh, okay. There was an unspoken like you're going to do this much, but the output was like I could imagine if I was confronted with a humongous Local Rabbit CD of like 20 bloody tracks or whatever the hell it was in the CD days.
Yeah.
You'd be going, what the hell is this band about? It was
Right.
I'm happy that we left some kind of good memories with people because I look at it and go like, this is a very strange output. How without the context, you'd just be like, what on God's green earth are these people trying to do? You know,
it was an age, particularly in your community, where a lot of bands were democracies. Meaning, you'd have multiple singers and songwriters.
Yeah, right.
You and Pete had very different styles. I tried to broach this with Rob and Pete, not to keep alluding to this episode we recently did, but I tried to broach this. Like, I really feel like you and Rob Benvie would write these more acerbic songs that were a little less traditional, like in the realm of singer-songwriter or whatever. And I thought Joel and Pete kind of, as Joel progressed, he definitely did more of that, I thought. At the time, there was a smart alecky vibe to his stuff as well, but there was something about that dynamic of having, except it was sort of the opposite. In the Rabbits, my sense is you did most of the songs. Like you would write and record most of your songs, and Pete would have fewer. And the Hermit, it was the opposite. So you have, would you agree with that characterization that your songwriting was a little more different, out of genre than Pete's?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So-
I think Pete would be comfortable with that as well.
yeah, and he was.
Yeah.
I think he got it. So it made for a fascinating dynamic, and I just wonder if you're saying that kind of maybe is why it came to a head. It didn't really feel like it should continue on some level.
Yeah, I'd have to go back, but I mean, I moved to Toronto. That was a big one, but
Oh, right.
it felt like for me, it felt like I just wanted to do what I wanted and not worry about like everybody feeling like they had equal say.
Yeah,
and stuff.
right, okay.
And it got to like, and that's just being in a band. And it wasn't necessarily like me and Pete's songs or the purport, like the ratio of those.
Yeah.
It was more like if I want to just use drum machine, I don't really want to worry about whether the drummer's feelings are going to get hurt.
Do you think democracies like that, like the ones I'm describing from that era, was that an over-romanticized thing? Was it over-glamorized, this notion of having everyone have a fair shake at...
Oh, you mean like is your perception that it was like that democratic kind of like wrong?
Yeah, I wonder. Like Sloan
Possibly.
and the Beatles really started this thing of everyone can sing and play songs, and it's fine. The record is the record. It's you were saying like your records had a certain eclecticism, probably because of the different voices and the different says. And I just wonder if maybe all of you kind of went on, most of you went on and sort of took command of your own destinies. You know, I'm just going to write my own songs. I'm the leader of the next band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's born of that experience of trying to please everyone.
For your from your first question, I think sometimes I can't speak for every band, but it seems like to me, from my observation,
Yeah.
that people like that idea of a band unit. It's a good brand that people enjoy. They like to imagine, you know, like what's like the traditional fan thing is like, oh, it's this unit.
The
But
Monkees,
in reality,
they're
if you-
basically like the
if you-
Monkees.
If you look under the hood,
living in the house. Yeah,
I think the bands that are good at selling that aspect of the brand are very conscious of it, and the boardroom meetings that they're having to it's maybe not that cynical, but it's kind of like you can't operate in that kind of chaotic state that I described. Like I think it ended when it maybe would have had to be, and we had meetings I remember where like. At one point it was like, oh, you need to improve your singing, like, or something. Like, it was just like, I always want...
people external to the band said that
No,
too?
like, within, it's like we had made attempts at some point to be like, okay, let's organize ourselves, or like,
Yeah.
and it's like I can never get into that. I mean, I take music shouldn't feel like a business thing for me at any point, and
Right.
that's probably I could stand to get better at that. But where the two things are like kind of too close together, it gets really weird. And I think I wish we were a bit more organized. 'Cause I wish my big regret is that we didn't capitalize off what we were doing and like go to Europe just for fun, to have more stories and more experiences.
Right.
We just toured Canada a gazillion times. That was kind of a weird, dangerous, uncomfortable, not a waste. We have so many good experiences, but like I would trade one of those tours for like going overseas, or
Even the U.S.
We did the U.S. a bit, but
Yeah.
anyways. So I'm not sure that kind of vibe that is being put out by those bands was always the case. But there were some bands that are chaotic enough that that's going to last. But I can't think of an example. Maybe you can, of a band that lasts like 2 decades, sticks around, and somehow like just has this natural thing. It becomes this forced thing after a while, where it's like, I can't imagine. I mean, what does a U2 hang look like? Like, do they hang? It's like they're.
We will never know for some of them. I can think of bands.
Not that I care, but
No. I assume Bono does a lot of the talking. No, I think Adam's probably really quiet. He doesn't really contribute.
I can't even name all the members.
I know. I have
bad example
from my youth. No, I think they're the bands that I really and truly love the most did have that vibe. Like, and I as I've gotten to know some of them, I think that's the case. They were a family, and it was a democracy, and they all contributed to the whole.
And they persisted, or they broke up at the right time?
Well, one of them is on an indefinite hiatus, and so I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. They won't be back.
They probably
I'm
won't
joking.
be back. No, they might not be. It's true. But, no, yeah, I think you're right. There's probably some aspect of that.
But that is good, right? Wouldn't you rather preserve that period than this patronizing representation of like what you want as a band?
Absolutely.
Like, what the listener wants as a band, like so that they feel warm and fuzzy?
Yeah, no, I mean, you performed at the Thrush Hermit reunion show in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
And we had this whole conversation about this, and I wrestled with it a little bit, but like, I went to go see that tour in London, Ontario. I couldn't make the Toronto show, and I had no nostalgia in me. Like, I just was like, no, I like the Hermit. I'm going to go see them. But I could tell, like, and Rob certainly struggles with, like, what are we doing? Like, to your point, like, why are we doing this right now? Thinking about, like, the existential question, like, why does this band need to be playing right now? But I went to the show and I lost it. Like, I didn't think of any of that stuff. I just was like, those are good songs. I love this band. I'm not transporting myself to that time when I was a kid because I think I'm a better person now. So it was just enjoying the music. So in the end, what I'm saying is the music was significant, and I was going to say, like you're saying, this band dynamic stuff might be a little overplayed. Do you agree that certain bands and certain people have alchemy, like a band chemistry? Like the Rabbits seem to me to have real chemistry.
Oh yeah, me, Pete, and Ryan still playing this like oldies group.
Yeah,
that we
right.
got together just because it's the opposite of everything else I do. It's very. Songs are relatively easy to learn, although the harmonies can be it's tiring to remember all the parts, but
Oldies 990?
Yeah, we just play like doo-wop and novelty
Right.
stuff over the last 10 years. And we started off playing at a little club in Toronto and just would like ram the place and like drink and play, and it was
social.
perfect.
Social and fun.
Super fun.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is because the bond there and the sense of humor and everything definitely comes out of all the insane, weird time we spent together that would never happen unless you're on a sports team or whatever. I don't know whether circumstances lead to like adults spending that concentrated amount of time together, but
it feeds into the music you're playing. It feeds into what you're making if you love each other, like if you have that bond, I think. Is that I mean, that is inherently an over-romanticization of interpersonal dynamics, but I think that's got to be there.
It could be. It's hard to tell.
Why else would you guys reconvene to do something totally for fun without the pressure of writing songs?
Oh yeah, in that case, it was like it was an experiment to see if we could do, because the idea of doing like a Rabbits reunion has been like absolutely something that's, I have a lot of other projects going on, so like it's almost, you see a reunion often with anybody, like way outside of Canada. It's just like the thing to do. Like
Right.
if you had a band in the 90s, it's like cash cow potentially, whatever. So
And most of the ones I've seen, by the way, seem to be better than they were as young people. It's very odd.
oh, probably. You mean like the playing and stuff?
yeah,
or?
like
I bet.
feel like the tension, that interpersonal tension, that youthful ego and whatnot is gone. So you just have people like focused on hanging out. And some of them I'm sure are business deals, like, yeah, let's just put the thing back together. But the ones that really feel real, all of that tension is gone, and you just have people playing. Maybe this is me psychoanalyzing, or like I
Could be,
but I do think they played. I've seen like the Jesus Lizard in 2009.
oh, they did one. Okay.
They've done 2 of them, and they
Yeah.
still come together every once in a while. But I saw them in 2009, having seen them a bunch of times in the 90s, and I just thought, this is better. Like, I don't know if that says more about me or them.
But he doesn't get butt naked anymore, I
Yeah,
bet.
he got a little naked.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to. It's part of the show.
It's part of the
Pay
show.
good money.
I don't think he. That's an interesting point that you're raising too. Like, are they just reliving our memories of them?
See, that all of that is
It's confusing.
a reality. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't. The thing I choose to ignore is that, like, I understand. There are records that I put on because they make me feel good because I heard them so many times.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing. And some people just leave it at that, and they'll continue to seek things that give them sort of the same feeling as a way of inching a little bit forward, or feeling like
Yeah.
that. I'm talking listener perspective now, right?
Right.
Anybody that makes music is a music listener as well. I feel like, I need to give myself room to like throw on Van Morrison Avalon Sunset because I like listening to that record. It makes me feel good. It reminds me of being at my parents' house or something, whatever.
Right.
But
all music listening has some transportive sense memory thing.
some of it, but
Yeah.
unless you continue to try to like seek out music that makes you feel uncomfortable, that you don't like right away, and maybe don't like right away is the wrong word, but just like an acquired taste in food or whatever. I mean,
Sure,
some
sure.
people will just eat the same things they're comfortable with. Some people are picky eaters. Some people will, only claim to like, the most cutting edge stuff. But I think a combination is healthy. I think though, if you're not exercising the part of your taste and your brain that maybe find some like intellectual connection first,
Yeah.
then you're going to stay in the same zone. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you're making music, I find that weird. I just don't understand that. I mean, if that's what you want your output to continue to be, you can keep doing the same thing. And you know what? Maybe that's good. You're probably going to have like a group of people who will like what you're doing forever.
Right.
But I just can't imagine doing that. I feel like there's this. I have so much to learn still. I've learned a lot, and I hang out with people who know like 10 times more than me about music, and I want to continue to be engaged. And the feeling of just
Right.
like resting on like your comfort zone, doesn't make me feel good. So,
But at the same time, you kind of want to know your core, I would think. Like, okay, here's
I have no core, so I'm free of that.
You're free of a core. Okay.
Well, I don't know if anyone I could occasionally get like a, like you get a sense like, oh, somebody likes this or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult to perceive like whether you're connecting with people. So the small things where I feel like, oh, there's a connection there, I'll take that. But I just keep making music anyways.
Yeah. What was the name of the last Local Rabbits album? Do you remember? This Is It, Here We Go?
I think that's the last one. Yeah.
And is that the record that has When the Lights Turn On?
The lights turn on.
The
yeah.
Lights Turn On is
Yeah.
the song. I was thinking about that song as I was listening to Nature, because and forgive me if this seems weird.
Hit me.
I always, like I say, I related to you I'm a lyrics guy, I think.
Good.
And I related to your writing on some level. I felt like we both had a bit of restless anger. Like we're not really sure where it should be pointed, but it's there. And that song, I was at school, I think, at the University of Guelph, and there was this strip that every university town has. Meat markets, clubs, kind of sleazy, weird crap, like a lot of man stuff. And that song seemed to me to be sort of an indictment of that club culture and the superficiality of it, maybe. And then I was listening to the new record, and I thought, wow, he's gone from, and I'm not, maybe this is the weird connection. You've gone from sort of thinking about what goes on in those places to making music that could very well be played at one of these clubs. Is that a...
You'd have to really squint your ears to think that music would be played there, but yeah.
You've gotten into kind of club and house music now, as your tastes have opened up, and I appreciate that, and that's fine.
That's always been there. I mean,
but
club music is a broad term. I mean, it's...
This is a wild theory, by the way.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
It allows me to... It's kind of an open... It's a canvas for me. My brother got into DJing when I was still playing in the Rabbits, and it was like a huge epiphany for me to like get over that taste hurdle and realize that different genres have different logic to them, and to genuinely crack it and then realize like I can like this, not like it because I want it on my CV of taste, but like I actually genuinely get this and I understand that the things I was looking for aren't in this kind of music. That is a total thrill for me, and that doesn't happen all the time, but that feeling is something that has really driven me to continue to like explore other areas of music. And
there's the music itself, and then there's the kind of milieu, the people that gravitate towards the music. And I feel like when I heard that song when it came out in whatever, 98 or whatever it was, like I can relate to this. Like I don't relate to those people either. Again, I'm totally maybe misrepresenting that song. What would you say that song was about?
I'm trying. I couldn't rattle off all the lyrics, but yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. But I think it's. I don't know that it was specifically aimed at like a sleazy club, but it was more of just about the kind of the illusion of the evening or something.
Right,
Sure. I think it was broad enough to go there. And feeling
some
like
bottle service in there, and like
maybe or also like maybe playing a show and thinking like mistaking like the glory of the evening for something like that's gonna last. I think that was in there as well. But
yeah, maybe okay.
So but I could see why you get that, and I think a lot of the lyrics point you to that. But I don't. I never had a genre-based mentality, or if I did, it was stamped out pretty early.
Okay.
And like that idea, like, oh, this music is for nitwits, like, and this music is. I mean, that's totally wrong. And a lot of that kind of I don't know, what would you call that? Like that sort of genre prejudice, like, is a little deeper than genres. It definitely happened in a lot of music criticism, and I think I managed to find my way out of that in my way of thinking about music pretty early.
Okay.
And I think that's what led me to things that were way outside of rock music, because I was really excited about cracking the code on different types of music.
Well, I think you saw as you've progressed, like your rock music has gotten a bit more, what's the right word? Technological? Like it's gone from the Rabbits, which had, keys, guitar, bass, drums mostly, to you're incorporating more synthesized elements to the point where we're at with Nature, which sounds to me like a purely sort of machine-oriented kind of sound. Is that fair? No, I mean, I'm sure there's instrumentation on it, but the presentation and production
I could get technical about the way we put it together,
Sure.
But it's very drum machine. I think maybe the tempos are maybe overtly dancey to somebody who's not as familiar with sort of like that realm.
Sure.
But the way we made it like actually involved us taking like drum patterns, and then we brought everything into a room and we have like live synth over it.
Okay.
So it's just not
Okay.
The instrumentation is not like guitar bass drums. And that's really been the case from my first record.
Yeah.
However, I think I'm interested in moving the music further and further away from overt pop song form. I like kind of the openness, the different approach to a piece of music that you would hear in not only like dance genres, but like maybe jazz or something, where it doesn't always have to be like, I love a good concise pop tune, and I probably still have a thread of that, but and I want to slip some lyrics in, but I've been trying harder and harder, like eliminate some of the density in the lyrics, because I'm not sure that I like to hear it. I mean, just because I have a lot to say, like I'm spewing a lot of words right now.
Yeah.
That's not like necessarily somebody I want to hang out with, you know. So likewise, just because I'm making music I'm proud of, like, I did a record called Maldemera that was like a 13-tune, really dense, really complicated for me. Anyways,
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of words, like concept album, for lack of a better description.
It's about a cruise ship.
Yeah, but it's like, it's so stupid of me to think that anyone is going to like listen to it from beginning to end, grab everything I tried to put in there. But that's okay.
Do you care about that? Do you care about audience reception to your work at this point?
Oh yeah. But never to the point where I'm going to patronize somebody by doing something I think they're going to like. But I absolutely live for. I'll do anything for a compliment, but I take a very long route. I mean, I cook too, so that's a quicker route. It's like, I made this thing. You know?
What do you mean
But
you cook? You cook? Is that a thing you like for your family?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I like, making
I
a
see.
nice meal.
Right,
Like,
sure.
I'm admitting this childish thing that, like, anybody who makes something has, right?
We want affirmation a little bit. I just
Absolutely.
wonder.
But I don't want to do it in a way that I feel like I'm cheating myself. And so I think there are those micro decisions that are made when you have this pressure of maintaining a band brand or your artist brand, and you feel like you've got this possibility of money or a career dangling in the distance, which should be a joke at this point for most people.
Yeah.
If anything, and I think we're seeing the results of it. It's liberated people to sort of just go, this is it. Despite Spotify's attempt to advertise to artists that, or whatever, SoundCloud, they show like these cool looking people going like, oh, here are ways to leverage your stats. It's like, where's the money?
You've been liberated this way for
a long time.
You had a day job, and this is something you do
totally
as a creative.
It's a bad look, though, because the culture's still not there. The culture still likes to see a particular type of person as an artist, and that's not the reason that maybe I'm not a household name. I never would be, but I'm using myself as an example. I think, though, that it is a small barrier, like even on the level that I'm working on, or anyway, it's like people still somehow like to see this idea of like their idea of what an artist is.
It's rather nefarious, because I think they want the ideal of the artist is the suffering artist, the artist who is struggling. That's more romantic
Totally
and easier
agree.
to
Totally
kinda
agree.
promote, and it's horrible. We're losing people to suicide and all sorts of mental health issues because
Agreed.
of this, and it's not cool.
That is an interesting topic. I mean, it's a dangerous one because I might say the wrong thing. It's very sensitive, and whenever you invoke like issues of mental illness, it's a very complicated discussion.
Absolutely.
And the language around it changes a little bit. But I always wonder whether there are unique conditions. My gut is yes, and I think you've alluded to it, that would put an artist in that state. And I wonder whether those conditions are about a way of expectations, a way of approaching it, maybe some outdated notions about what it means. I think we're in a transitional period that it's easy to talk about how like the internet's changed the way of consuming music and everything, but it also changes music makers' relationship with like what does making music mean, and we touched on it in the beginning, but it can really be disappointing.
Well, but it's impacting all cultural forms. Remember that story from maybe last year or a few months ago of the actor Jeffrey Owens? There's an actor, his name is Jeffrey Owens.
Okay.
He played Elvin on The Cosby Show.
Oh yes, I know him.
And so he, I want to say it was last year, there was a big story because some idiot photographed him because he was working at a Trader Joe's. And it became a big thing that he was being shamed because he was an out-of-work actor.
I remember that now, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we undervalue all cultural expressions to the point where that's, what are we supposed to... So the subtext of that was that out-of-work actor should be doing anything except working at Trader Joe's. He should be in a rehab center. He should be, I don't know what people were thinking, Like, that's really screwed up.
It's
that
absolutely screwed
people
up.
think that artists need to be.
Maybe he's there because he doesn't want to take stupid ass roles.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he doesn't want to be in a shit TV show, which
Exactly.
most of them are.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
good on him.
But the same thing is true of musicians. Like, I think it's going to come to a head. We're seeing little glimmers of it. Like, that story really resonated with me.
Same.
'Cause how many musicians have I interviewed from my more safe perches? Like, when I worked at CBC and was making a salary, and I'd be interviewing a band, and I say, when are you going on tour? And they'd say, well, we all have day jobs, so we're going to sort that out. I wouldn't even think about it. I'm like, oh, okay, well, good luck with that. And now, like, I'm doing this thing, and it's not a lucrative thing, but I do it because I feel like it's something I need to do. And we're all feeling it, right? And I don't have a great point to raise here, but there's something going on in terms of how we consume and appreciate artists, consume music and work. It's not viable for any of us, and I think you're raising these points a little bit as to why are we doing this.
The monetizing part is the part that people focus on a lot.
Yeah.
People get really upset. Like they'll I've seen, musicians post on Instagram like, oh, look at this hilariously low, the check I got from
Right.
Spotify or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's hard to stop. That does tie into people's appreciation, but there's always been some weird, I don't know, like malaise or something with the idea of like monetizing off the arts, at least in music,
There's something
from the beginning, right?
It's more like people pay this phone.
But people should
It's
pay
like $2,000.
100%. I've always thought like
and all the music on it I got for free.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're talking before the tape was rolling, as they say.
Yeah.
About record collection or something.
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
Again, not precious about vinyl or anything, but the idea of like a limitation of any type really changes your relationship with music.
Yeah.
And I think that paying for something when it is the only choice, it makes you take the thing out of the cellophane, which hopefully in the future we won't have that because that's a pollutant.
Right.
But like you get home, you look at it, you're excited, you listen to it because you spent money on it.
Yeah.
Not this constant influx. And it happens to me too. And like I think I can be a pretty deep listener, but I really have to train myself to be a deeper listener.
Well, we're both dads too. Like I listen to records when I have the time, and the time is very precious. So that's part of it. And I understand. I don't want to sound like a crotchety old man, but I do think we have to be conscious of how we consume and how it's impacting artists, or people who make stuff, because they're not going to be able to make it anymore. Like it's just going to end.
I'm not because we're agreeing so much, I don't want to disagree, but I think at this point proof is in the pudding.
We're going to keep making stuff no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not just saying with me. I mean, that's for me. I need it. I need to do it. I like to do it. All my relationships outside my family pretty much are friends that I've made through music, and I continue to like experiment, and it's just my way of existing.
Yeah.
Sounds overly deep, but and I feel like I have something to say, and I'll continue to do it until maybe I don't feel like I have a voice. But beyond that, you look at the output. Like if you do some deep digging on whatever, like SoundCloud or Spotify or whatever you use, I mean, you're gonna find that there's these people. I mean, look at this group Tennyson from. I think they're. I don't know. Are they from Edmonton?
I think that's right.
Oh,
yeah.
you should be spending some time with them when you go.
Yeah.
They're like 0 years old.
Yeah.
They're brainiacs. The music is like so effing on point production wise.
Yeah.
Super smart.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe they're figuring out a way to make some dough, but clearly that's not the.
No.
And I could cite a million other like groups that are not known that or one person things where like you listen to it, I know how much time it, like
that's
talking multi-hour.
Okay, but that's also a weird thing. We're making this show, right? And I've made over 500 of these shows, and I've just given it to Apple, and I've given it to Google Play, and I said, here's all the content. They don't give me a thing. They don't give me any money.
So I'm not getting paid for this?
No. And the music is the same. So the loophole is we all have decided we're going to persist. And the company's like, great, we don't have to pay you. Like, we're going to give you 15 cents for your song, or whatever it is. It's a complete monopoly on our creative impulses because they know we are insatiable and we can't stop and we want to express ourselves. I don't want to depress you, Ben. I just don't see how this is viable still. At some point, we can't stop feeding these beasts for nothing. And
I agree with that, and maybe something will change. I don't know that people's drive to do stuff is going to... I don't know, maybe it'll eliminate some careerists from the mix.
I guess, but that doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right to me that the quality of someone's work could possibly be as high if they're like, I'll get to that after I work my 8-hour job. Like if you were Neil Young, who you invoked earlier, I think, did you? Maybe you didn't.
I don't think so.
Maybe I just was thinking of him. You know, that's a bad example. He's from the old school, but he's ostensibly got all day to maybe work on a song.
You could probably record a Neil Young record after work.
These days you probably could.
I like Neil Young.
Yeah, I like a lot of his output as well. No, maybe a bad example. But I guess I'm saying, like,
that's what I do, so I don't have that much, like...
sympathy? Yeah.
It's not that I don't have sympathy, but we're in a weird time, so it's kind of like that outrage... If you're going to be outraged about it, like, your shit better be pretty good. It's kind of like, I don't really feel that much sympathy for people who can't, like, make it and live off it, because I made a decision not to a while ago.
Right.
But
you still make the music.
I still make the music, so it's kind of like, I don't know. But I don't know. I'm not... I agree with you looking outside of myself and just looking at the fact that these big companies are capitalizing off content. It's sickening to me. Like, it's the same. I remember arguing with somebody that we both know about whether Much Music should be paying for like royalties
for videos.
For videos,
yeah.
And they didn't at one point when we had something on there. Now, because when you're as tiny as our band was, you would just be like, oh, thanks so much,
Yeah.
But really, it's like when you've got a small amount of money in the bank, everybody's small account adds up to a whole bunch of money that they're making more money off of.
Right.
So you should be able to, and it finally kind of like caught up, and whoever got paid after that was disagreeing with me, I'm sure they were happy to get the extra dough.
Yeah.
Out of principle, that should occur, but it's really difficult to expect that the population is going to... I don't know how it's going to change. I'm not a mastermind in that area.
The whole model doesn't make sense because the Much Music thing you described, or the radio, was playing your songs, and ideally someone would be like, oh, that's a good song. What is that? And they'd say, Local Rabbits, Ben Gunning. That person would then be like, I'm going to make a point of buying that thing that I heard promoted to me. Now everything is... Not everything can be promotion. Not everything is basically like, no, we don't have to give you money for that podcast. We've given you the opportunity to promote it. That's weird.
That is super weird.
And I think all the music streaming services are like, no, the idea is that people get to hear it for free, and then if they like it, they'll buy it on Bandcamp.
Of course they say, yeah.
But who's doing that?
No, I agree with you, but I don't know a way out, and I try not.
Either.
I don't really try to let that. It could be transient, but I mean,
I don't mean to mire us in this muck.
No.
But
I've debated it many times. The bummer part of it is also for the consumer of the stuff. Again, I just feel that as a consumer of content, if you will.
Yeah.
And I say content because I'm using the same cynical term that is used, in those circles.
Yeah.
It's difficult to have the kind of attention that you would have previously. I already mentioned that before, but that's the real downside, because it's a vicious circle in that sense, because you have so much of it. It's harder to develop a bond with something. So
it's harder to develop a bond if I hit add on my phone. Like, I'm just using my phone and hitting add.
Exactly.
And then I'm not proud of the fact that I have all this music on my music streaming service library.
You're not going to get the outrage required by the general public to kind of move the bar. I don't think. You know what I mean?
It's just not. It's the opposite.
Everyone
outrage.
thought they should get everything for free.
That's what's going on, and it's devaluing.
I remember
everything.
Foo Fighters being on TV, kind of being pro Napster and kind of making. It's nice that they made their money, but they were like. And it always irked me. And because Metallica are geeks or whatever, or the drummer was very outspoken about it. He's a huge nerd. And
Lars, yeah.
And he was very like, but he was painted at the time as being very kind of like old school. But I kind of agree. I mean, you shouldn't have to pay for shit.
He ended up being right a little bit.
I think so. I don't know if it's weird.
Now
it's very hip to be like, okay, we should be getting paid, and it's all everywhere. And I'm sort of like ambivalent because I've kind of been through all of those. Like that was my opinion at the time, but I'm kind of like, yeah. But I also see a lot of like, even at an underground level, there's so much sort of like curation of one's brand, and it's fucking corporate and cynical.
Right.
At such an early stage that I'm like kind of sickened by that as well. So I'm like, F you guys. Like I don't care if you make money. Like I figured out to make money doing something else.
Right.
And I don't, like, and I wish things were different in some ways, but that's the balance I kind of struck.
Yeah.
So why am I going to care about some kind of like really calculating, brand oriented?
Right.
I don't know. That sounds like I'm an old fart, but especially when there's no real path that is viable for you, it's a bit odd.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, I just think it has to be somewhere at the front of mind, like what we're contributing to, what we're doing, and it's a huge conversation that you and I are not going to solve tonight. But
let's talk about stuff we like, though.
Well, I'm glad you indulged me in talking about it. I do want to ask you, as we sort of start to wrap up, about nature generally, because you talked about how you made a conscious decision not to be as dense with your lyrics, and maybe the singing or the words maybe weren't front of mind in terms of what you were trying to convey. But is there an overarching theme lyrically or conceptually to this record?
No, but I think it just naturally, no pun intended, fell into some of the previous records I made were very, very exacting indictments of the culture or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas this is a little bit more reflective. I'm not trying to, like, I feel more like I want to write about how I feel. About how
personal?
I feel and how
personal?
I respond. I feel like there's always got to be the cultural kind of thing is always there, and so I always try to bring some concrete elements in, but I don't know. I've said a lot as far as nitpicking, and I feel like I want to explore how I feel, and a lot of the imagery that is invoked is about natural surroundings, and so that's all the only reason I call it nature. But I didn't write it going like this is the sequence and this is what I'm trying to say. Still spend a long time on the lyrics, and for me to like get something that I don't think is corny takes a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a little bit of a different approach because I'm trying to be a little bit more in tune with what I want to listen to. I love listening to instrumental music. Most of the time I listen to music because a lot of time I find lyrics are not speaking to me. I don't think they're maybe challenging a lot of time. Occasionally you get some artists who are amazing. And
do you have a favorite lyricist?
That's a good question. I will admit it's an easy one for me to grab, but I'm always afraid to say a favorite, or because I've exposed this to enough people that I don't want it to be a grabbable thing. But I'm a huge Steely Dan fan, and that was a band that had a big influence on me. I think because back to my listening to music when I was younger and using their normal like radio channels and all that, like for listening to music, they were a bit different and a little bit like more R&B influenced. Even though you're listening to a rock station, you'll hear this stuff. Yeah. But on top of it, it was very taboo to like them, like being in an indie band. It was one of those bands that I enjoyed saying I liked and arguing with people about. Now it's kind of common that everybody
young people
likes them.
Bad Not Good were on this show just raving about Steely Dan.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you meet somebody who like claims to hate Steely Dan, it's like almost like they're a square now. But it was the opposite when I was coming up, and
I think the slickness of their presentation kind of hid the darkness of the lyrics.
Absolutely,
and the acerbic nature of what they seem just as
they
critical.
Are some of the best lyricists. I mean, I love Joni Mitchell. I love Thomas Dolby's an underrated songwriter. He's known for like the novelty song "She Blinded Me with Science," but his album "Golden Age of Wireless" is amazing.
Oh, I don't know it. I'll check that out.
I really like Ryan Power as a contemporary guy. He's one of the only kind of singer-songwriters I relate to these days. Not that I'm out there seeking it that closely. I follow these weird paths and I just do my own thing. I'm so out of touch with... I don't read any kind of like taste aggregators. You know, I kind of just like... I go on SoundCloud or I go like... Or listen to like something that a friend whose taste I trust likes, and I hang out with all weirdos who like deep shit. So
Right.
yeah, I end up on usually like instrumental kind of paths. And
Do you relate to hip-hop still or ever?
I used to, but and this is not a judgment call. It's not a zone that it almost became like a very mainstream form and a very profitable form or something, and it kind of turned me off. Like even the old stuff, like I loved, of course, like a lot of like 90s and early 2000s hip hop. And it's difficult for people to realize that was not cool in indie circles at the time, but I assure you, it was not. Like R&B in particular, it was just not. It was different. It was separate.
Yeah.
You couldn't even say you don't like it now. You know, it's like it's part of the thing that you're supposed to be into. Like you have to even claim to like it. So now you go into a cafe, it's like 90s hip hop and R&B is like playing Beatles or something.
I feel like
it's everywhere, right?
you've incorporated a fair amount of R&B into your solo output.
Absolutely, and there's a baseline of like R&B kind of like maybe production choices or like even harmonic leaning or something like that.
Yeah, I've always thought that. Yeah,
but as a genre right now, I don't relate to it. But I just shift. I have to go where I'm interested, and I've been listening to a lot more house music and weirdo like abstract stuff, and I still like trying to get some lyrics in there. So that was the outcome, basically.
Okay. So the lyrics are personal. Are they influenced by either directly or maybe, if you think on it, is being a parent influencing you as a writer?
That has. I've written a bit about that, but not a ton. There's one song, Massive Love, that I wrote for one of my kids.
Yeah. From 2016 or something?
Yeah, it was on the previous record.
Yeah.
But it's usually kind of like in my head kind of stuff. I sometimes
if you're angry at the world now.
Oh, I'm not. Maybe you are.
Are you not?
I'm not angry at the world.
If you're critical of the world and how it's developing, I think when you become a parent and I've always had that, a little bit of like opposition to what's going on, but I think as a parent, it becomes a little more urgent. You're kind of more concerned about what's going to happen with your kids. Do you have that a little bit?
Yes. However, that would be a bad motivator for lyrics because I can acknowledge I try to go multiple layers down. In the heat of the moment, I can be very aggressive with my language.
Yes.
Because I don't know how you feel, but I would love for my kids to live in a Norman Rockwell painting, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And when you're surrounded by like such wolves, and just negative things, but also trying to explain like the reality of like the privilege of our country, the privilege of our family, and all that's good. Like they're way ahead of us. Like my daughter's 14 and she's a brainiac, and just the baseline, the vocabulary for this stuff is incredible. Growing up in downtown Toronto, it's amazing. Like I had to get there from an ignoramus suburban kind of point of view to where she is already at 14. But anyways, I may spin your question like, yes, it does impact me, but that doesn't directly impact my writing. I'm with or without kids. I try to be very thoughtful about the world I'm living in. It's changing really fast.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of untapped area for writing, period, and it's not being tapped because people don't feel like maybe it fits into a tune, and maybe it doesn't. But I'm happy to try it.
Yeah.
but I want to do it in a way that is maybe not as obtuse as it was before, or maybe it is. It really depends on my mood.
Yeah, you're always
But my
shifting.
main goal is don't be corny
Yeah,
by my own standard.
right.
And that means, like, don't patronize people. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Be genuine to your taste. Have good taste. I can't help you with that.
I appreciate that, Ben. So, what's next for you? I mean, Nature is just a few weeks old, right, or a month? When did this come out, this record?
Well, you can make it anytime you want when you're doing
Sometime in
things like that.
2019,
Yeah,
right?
it was this year. Like,
Yeah.
it was something. August 1st, maybe? Or
Okay, right.
something like that.
So what's
Summer.
what's next for you?
Well, I am involved in a few other projects with some, like, amazing folks in town that I've become really tight with. So I put out an actual, speaking of vinyl records, of a real slab with my friend Joseph Shabison. And that's like very out there kind of abstract kind of stuff, which I'm really happy with. So that's on a label called Seance Center.
Is that instrumental based or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's... you'd have to check it out. I mean, the term ambient is used very broadly to describe...
Sound.
I wouldn't put it sound, exactly. I would say it's spacious. There's a lot of room sound, but I think it stands apart from maybe some of the output you might be hearing, but it's hard to tell. There's so much good stuff out there. I can't really go down that path without referencing actual music, but
Yeah.
really happy with that. But I've got some other sort of left to center pop music, if you will, that I'm making with Rob and Dan from Bernice. I don't know. Yeah. So we have put out an EP in the past, and we're putting out another one shortly, or we'll probably drop a tune from it. We have a whole record that we've got almost in the can now. And so that's been a trip. So really happy with that. That's going to come out at some point soon. And I make music with Tom Gill, who's also in Bernice, good friend of mine now.
Good friend of mine.
And there we go.
Yeah.
So we do like house music, but it's way left to center. We're starting to work on some vocal house tracks. So we're just figuring out how to like bring in some cronies and maybe some people outside the scene, and just for fun, experiment with that. So that started as a kind of not a ruse, but like at a bar, we were like, yeah, we should just do like house tracks. And then I'm like one to actually follow up. So we started getting together and hang out every, month or two and just continue cracking.
Very
at it.
busy. You're a busy guy then.
Yeah, and a couple other things. I got a project with a guy in Sao Paulo over the internet, and we released an EP of that. So I like to stay busy and
It's great, man. No, it's
keep making good stuff.
So where can people go to learn more about all of these things?
Well, they could put my name into a browser, and then they'll see a bunch of stuff. But
Is it all over the place, or do you have like a Bandcamp or some
I have a
centralized-
SoundCloud that's got a little... That would be a good home base for like the different projects that I've got. And then I'm on, depending on what the project is, like almost everything's on Spotify, etc. So
Okay. No website.
I'm not plugging Spotify. I have a really out-of-date website that because I can't... I'm really, really shit at admin, so like I can do like one thing at a time. Like I can post to Instagram, but I don't even like posting things that are meaningless. So I try to do a nice photo once in a while, but I can't keep pumping out stuff.
There's a lot of stuff you're supposed
So
to do.
a website is, I don't know, do people go to websites?
I don't know. I always ask at the end, and almost everyone's like, just go to my Instagram.
I don't think I do. So I'm going to probably nuke it at some point. We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need one. I put all my stuff on there.
Oh, yeah, that's good. You need a home base. So.
Okay, so Ben Gunning on Instagram. If there's a song from Nature that we could go out on, which one would you select?
Well, it's kind of varied, but the last one that we kind of released, if you will, is called Contra Rivalry.
Okay.
Doesn't flow off the tongue, but
Contour Rivalry. Where does the name even come from?
that is a picture that has two different pictures in it based on the negative image, right? So,
okay.
like the vase with the two faces. That's
Right.
what that's called.
Okay. What inspired the song? The lyric line.
Oh, just about my own weaknesses, and it's kind of an ode to friends and family for sticking with me, or the awe that an appreciation that I still have.
Oh, that's
people
nice.
that like me,
Okay.
That's
I like
kind
you,
of
Ben.
what it is.
I like
Thank
you, Ben.
You don't know me that well.
I know you a little
Joking.
bit. Yeah. No, here we go. All right. This is Contra Rivalry by Ben Gunning from his new album, Nature. Ben, I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. Thanks for being on the show, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks for letting me spew my thoughts.
Me too. I spewed. We both spewed. It was fine.
Lots of spewing.
Well, that was fun for me to flash back to December of 2019 before there was a pandemic, before I moved to Alberta, and while I was still in Ontario, when I, was settling all family business and trying to meet with people before I split town. And that is why we all got to hear Ben Gunning on the 544th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available on all Apple and Google platforms and other things too, as I talked to Ben about. It's just on everything. It's just there for free. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's fine. I hope you enjoy it. Also, if you can't find an episode you're looking for, or if you want to learn more about me and sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit my website, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook or follow the show on Twitter at vishcreative, or follow me directly at vishkhanna. Now, if you can, go to patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to the podcast. That is the primary and only real source of revenue for the show. So please, if you like Creative Control and would like to see it continue and maybe even flourish somehow, please go to patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation today. Thanks again to live@masseyhall.com, where you can watch beautifully captured concerts by great Canadian artists. Also, Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, and Grandad's Donuts for their in-kind support for this show. Thanks as always to Jim Guthrie for letting me use some music of his on the program. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode with me and Ben Gunning, and for possibly following or subscribing to the show and keeping up with it and telling your friends to do the same. And that's all I got to say. I will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.